the History Chaser, bringing you history by land, sea, and air. Today I bring you the story of the USS Wolverine, an aircraft carrier that never saw combat, but affected the outcome of several vital battles and helped change the course of not just a war, but of history itself. It's March 1942, and the United States is barely 90 days into the Second World War. Military defeats and setbacks fill the newspapers on the home front as the U.S. and its allies heroically work to stem the tide. During this dark time, the U.S. Navy finishes the purchase of a first of an unusual pair of ships, the steamship C&B. This large paddle-wheel coal-burning passenger steamer, miles from any possible combat, seemed an unusual choice for the U.S. Navy to buy to many in her home port of Chicago, Illinois. What the dock workers and the departing crew of the C&B didn't know was the impact she would have and how even the career of a future president would be written from her decks. Looking like the missing link between an ocean liner and a Mississippi riverboat, C&B was designed by naval architect Frank E. Kirby for the Cleveland and Buffalo Transit Company of Cleveland, Ohio. Her name was a play on the owner's initials of C and B, and the company's previous experience led it to require two basic design features for the ship. First was paddle propulsion, which offered an increased maneuvering capability and stability in rough weather, along with more space for cabins and decks. Second was using a more expensive and much heavier compound inclined steam engine that could develop 12,000 horsepower at low revolutions without the vibration associated with lighter vertical type steam engines. It was felt that meeting these design features would improve passenger comfort and their desire for a good night's sleep. The 6,400-ton ship was built by the Detroit Shipbuilding Company of Wyandotte, Michigan. C&B, the largest sidewheel steamer in the world at the time, was launched on the 9th of November 1912. Passengers found a ship quite luxurious for her time. With large, lavishly decorated public spaces in various styles, she also had a promenade deck that extended almost 400 feet, 121.9 meters in length. This area was subdivided into sections including a bookshop, flower booths, an observation room, as well as separate writing rooms for men and women. A number of private parlors were constructed. Each was a different design and contained beds, a private bath, and balconies. Even an orchestra played on its own balcony at the end of the main saloon. Passengers were accommodated in 510 rooms, of which 424 were regulation, 62 were fitted with a private toilet, and 24 were parlors and suite, giving sleeping room for 1,500 persons and capable of carrying a total of 6,000 passengers and 1,500 tons of cargo loaded on the main deck. She and her sister ship, the Greater Buffalo, proved quite popular, running their passenger service from 1913 to 1941. When war broke out and the dominance of the aircraft carrier was established, the U.S. Navy needed somewhere safe to train new pilots in carrier landings. The Great Lakes, with near ocean-like conditions far from enemy attacks, proved an ideal location to build naval training bases, and the large paddle-wheel sisters, who at 500 feet long were almost two-thirds the length of the Yorktown-class aircraft carriers currently in service, were seen as easy conversion candidates. C&B was taken in hand in March 1942, and her conversion was brutal and quick. Renamed USS Wolverine, by November 1942, her towering palace-like superstructure, ornate public spaces, and private bath cabins were stripped away and replaced with a 550 feet, 170 meters long wooden flight deck. A new bridge island was built, arresting cables were installed, and the funnels were rerouted to the starboard side of the ship, along with other modification. No hangars, elevators, or defense weapons were fitted to the ship. One easy clue to tell the sisters apart was Wolverine had 4 funnels, while her sister had 2. Wolverine began her new assignment in January 1943, assigned to the 9th Naval District Carrier Qualification Training Unit, stationed at Chicago, Illinois, at what came to be called Navy Pier. Her sister ship, now named USS Sable, joined Wolverine in May 1943, and the two ships began to be casually referred to as the Corn Belt Fleet. By 7th of May 1943, it was reported that the 7,000th successful landing had been made on Wolverine. However, many aircraft weren't so lucky. In conjunction with NAS Glenview, the two paddle wheelers afforded critical training in basic carrier operations to thousands of pilots and also to smaller numbers of landing signal officers or LSOs. Wolverine and Sable enabled the pilots and LSOs to learn to handle takeoffs and landings on a real flight deck. Sable and Wolverine were a far cry from frontline carriers, but they accomplished the Navy's purpose, qualifying naval aviators fresh from operational flight training in carrier landings. One of the new pilots who became certified off the former C&B was future President George H.W. Bush. These pilots would go on to fight in many of the crucial battles of 1943 to 1945. Wolverine and Sable were not true aircraft carriers, and they had certain limitations. One was that there were no elevators or hangar decks to store damaged aircraft. If all the storage spaces on the flight deck were filled with damaged aircraft, the day's operations were over and the carriers headed back to their pier in Chicago. Landing aircraft on calm days became another problem for the carriers. Neither carrier was able to generate sufficient speed to meet the wind-over-deck landing minimums for aircraft such as F-6F Hellcats, F-4U Corsairs, TBM Avengers, and SBD Dauntlesses. When there was little or no wind on Lake Michigan, operations often had to be curtailed. Occasionally, when low wind conditions persisted for several days and the pool of waiting aviators started to bunch up, the Navy turned to an alternate system of qualifications. The pilots qualified in SNJ Texans, even though most pilots had last flown the SNJ 4 or 5 months earlier. When the war ended, the need for this unique pair of trainer aircraft carriers ended as well. Shortly after the war, when no buyers could be found for either ship, the two were sold for scrap. Today, their legacy lives on in the Navy Pier of Chicago, now repurposed into a new venue, and in hundreds of aircraft wrecks scattered across the bottom of the lake from rookie pilots crashing their training aircraft. Some of these aircraft, like this Grumman F6F3 Hellcat and the only known example left of its type, this Vought SB2U2 Vindicator, have been recovered and restored. So did you know of this unique aircraft carrier of the Great Lakes? Do you know of any other unique vessels we should check out? Comment below. Please help us get to our goal of 1,000 subscribers. This really helps the channel and helps us bring more content to fellow history lovers. Please check our info box out for more options to help support our channel. We really appreciate it. Thank you, my friends. Till